Happy Thursday, everybody. We finally got there. I'm Jade Scott. This is Growth RX. And today I am joined by an amazing panel of women leaders in sport. Hello, girls. Thanks for joining me.
Hi.
Pleasure.
Today we've got Louise Bibby, Michelle Bergeron, Australian version, or Bergeron from the Canadian version, and Tina Mayo, all three powerful, inspiring women that I am very blessed to call colleagues and also friends. So we're going to have a chat today a little bit just while I check into the group. Yeah, we are certainly live in there. Please hit us with your comments and all of that sort of stuff if you've got any feedback for discussion or anything like that. Basically, today we are going to talk about one of my passions and one of our passions, which is leadership. But an extension of that is women leadership. We are all on this panel females, and we are all forging the way in whatever aspect or industry of sport that may be. But also cover a little bit of statistics of what's happening in sport at the moment, what the participation rates are, what leadership looks like, those roles look like, where the barriers might fall down, and what potential opportunities we can look to try and build that up. And more than anything, inspire the next generation of girls in sport, girls stepping into sport, opening up different sporting roles and responsibilities, and particularly in those leadership roles. So, Louise, I'd love to start with you. Where did your leadership journey start, and where do you find yourself in women in sport at the moment?
Yeah, so I suppose growing up, I've always had an affinity for leadership. I think it comes down to that human nature. It's the reason why I'm an osteopath as well. The compassion and empathy that you have for others can sometimes outweigh, your own sort of personal benefit and gain. So I suppose I've always had an affinity for leadership through school and university and sports and clubs and teams, which found me sort of as a professional wanting to sort of continue that sort of, I suppose I have a passion for connecting, genuine connection with other humans. And, so to be able to participate with, within my profession with Osteopathy Australia, whether it have been end of year drinks or things like that. So with my leadership, I suppose it's always been a little bit of a self-sacrificing leadership type style. I've always liked to make an example of myself. So whether it was coming back from knee injury and participating in sport myself, or using myself as an example that, you can get back to sport post rehab. So now I suppose I'm trying to find that because I've seen some success with my leadership style and with my own sort of progression, I'm now trying to pass on those opportunities to others. I sort of get a lot of motivation from others when they sort of, follow along my story. So now that I'm sort of representing in the osteopathy world and also in football myself, I've also trying to give back to the student population, finding myself in a unique position, a little bit unlike most females who typically might find that by this stage of life, they're settling down with kids and things. I suppose I've got a unique opportunity to make some headway, and I'm really enjoying that.
And we need to take the time to congratulate you. You were announced last night as one of our GRX rising stars and emerging leaders in allied health. Well done.
Nice work.
Thank you to Growth RX. It's a great moment.
And we're going to learn a lot more about you and where your passions lie, your strengths and weaknesses, and I guess where the challenges have arisen for you throughout your journey. Michelle, I'd love to cut to you next. Now,
sure.
You obviously work with Melbourne Football Club, and on the flip side of that, you're the physiotherapist for the Australian Ballet. So you step into two very distinct and unique parts of sport, and particularly on your leadership journey, but you also sit on a couple of boards and are forging the way in regards to governance as well.
Yeah, so I think, kind of like Louise, I have had an affinity to being a leader like my whole life, student council president, sat on school boards, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting to be in a couple different sports where women are represented quite differently. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to step into roles in more male-dominated sports and still be able to do what I do. On the boards, I'm on two different boards. I'm on Sports Medicine Australia's State Council for Victoria, and I'm the chair, which has been great. I get to work with amazing people and bring more women on board as well, which is always great. And I'm also on the board for Australian Flying Disc Association, managing I'm the medical coordinator for their whole program, which has been a great opportunity as well to just step into a leadership role of actually how to govern your athletes and how to decide that kind of stuff. So it's been great opportunities so far.
Amazing. And we're going to extend on some of those experiences across all different levels of sport and sporting networks, clubs, and all of those sorts of things. And whether it be a club industry or whether it be following individual sporting talent, which I know is where you kind of come in, Tina. I mean, you've worked a lot on the golfing circuit, quite a lot amongst many other sports. Where's your journey started and where do you find yourself now?
Yeah, so obviously I was involved in sport as a junior, but I'd never sort of played golf up until I was at uni, and I ended up sort of volunteering my time through the Institute of Sport and spending time with coaches and strength conditioning staff there. That's really where my journey began. So then taking on, as far as leadership goes, I suppose then venturing out into areas where osteopaths hadn't been before and sort of forging the way, and being surrounded by other really driven people, I think has been probably had the biggest impact on my life. And whether they were athletes or coaches or, physios, other people, psychologists, they were all involved in helping people get the best out of themselves. I really found that was probably the biggest step for me, where I realized there's, if you want to be the best in your field, doesn't matter if you're the athlete or the coach or whoever you are, you've just got to keep pushing those boundaries and stepping outside and trying things maybe people haven't tried before, and not to be scared to do that. So that philosophy sort of, I suppose, held me in good stead, and I still encourage that with my team. And it doesn't matter what the skill is, you can always keep getting better at something. So I feel like probably my experiences as I went through uni and went through like being part of an institute program that's very, I suppose, with a bunch of other people who are really motivated and really excited all the time about new things coming forward, and what's the best stuff around and what technology is available, and let's just see what the rest of the world's doing. Let's not be so insular and feel like we know everything, because we don't. So I think mindset's been a big part of surrounding yourself with people who know more than you, and just keep learning from them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think the common thread that we're finding from all of you is that notion of giving back and inspiring others, whether it be who you're working with in the moment or the next generation coming through.
Yeah.
But one thing I can say for all of you is that there is a huge element of hustle and grind to get to where you got to. You've faced adversity, you've pushed hard, you've dug deep, and you've worked hard. And I think one of the things that are coming through more and more that I'd really like to explore and get your thoughts on at the moment, that we're seeing in not only just in sport, but in leadership positions and organizations around the world, is this gender diversity and this balance between male and female. And somehow, somewhere along the line, that if we didn't have a certain amount of positions allocated to women on boards, then potentially we might see those being male dominated. Now, I know personally, if I go for a role, I want to be chosen for that role because I'm the right person for the job and because of everything I bring and everything I invest. I don't want to be chosen because a woman needs a seat on a board. And I'm sure that you'll all agree with me, but I'd love you to extend here. We've worked really hard to get to where we've got to. Do you think that, and we're going to cover a whole lot of statistics and that sort of stuff as well, Michelle, with all of your positions on boards and having to be voted in and all of those sorts of things and follow all down that governance line, is there a need to set aside a certain amount of positions on board for women, or they wouldn't get them? Are we blessed in allied health that actually doesn't happen? I mean, even just with the market research I did back in January for Growth RX, we sit at 41% female, 49% across all industries, chiro, physio and podiatry on average. So we are very, very balanced as allied health professionals. Certainly there are some others that don't, but is there a need for that in your experience moving forward?
Yeah, look, I struggle with that as well, because I feel the same way. I don't want to be given something because I'm a woman, but I also don't want to not be given something because I'm a woman. And there are times where that sort of feels like the case, where as a female, it's sort of been up against a bit of a roadblock because it's not the first time a woman is going to step into that type of role or something along those lines. So I can understand it from both perspectives, and I sort of struggle to decide whether one is better than the other. What I would prefer is that I be the appropriate candidate, but also they're trying to put a woman in the space, and that just happens to be me, because there are some amazing women out there who could fill the space. In my experience still, I find it interesting because in allied health, we are quite close to being at parity, but on councils and boards and whatnot in allied health, we are definitely not. Even the Vic State Council for SMA, we have 4 women out of 13. And I don't know if that's just because we have less women applying, or if we just have less opportunity for them. We didn't have as many people. I find it interesting that generally speaking, it still looks closer to like 70-30 men, even though we're actually close to 50-50.
And I saw that very, very clearly when we had the Rising Star nominations. For every female that was nominated, we had 8 males nominated. So even though we do have that diversity in regards to numbers, we're certainly not having that in regards to participation at a leadership level. Do you find that, Louise? I mean, what's your experience even out in the country? Does it change? You work in rural areas and you've got an outreach program. Do you find it's different out in the country, or do women, is their voice a little bit more softened? And if you do step up as a female in the country, are you loud and boisterous? Is that how you're seen? Or
well, there's obviously a lot of the time rural and remote regions are generally a little bit behind the ball when it comes to the advancements of these types of business and sport leadership things. So obviously, in terms of rural sporting clubs and things like that, there still is some of those gender sort of pigeonholing of men in the coaching roles and women in the canteen thing. That's still very much a concept. But in regards to general industry outside of allied health, like I know specific across the hospital boards, is particularly around Swan Hill and things like that, that there is some great female representation across sort of medical roles in particular, and also, again, we're a little bit behind in the country in that country sense, but I suppose when it comes to practitioners as well, like graduate osteopaths and in regards to maybe allied health, there's generally tends to be quite a good balance of male versus female practitioners in allied health and medical field that are moving to remote and rural locations as well.
Yeah. And what about, Tina, in that strength and conditioning space? I mean, does it change there? I know that when my daughter was about 4 years old and I took her down to the gym, there was the weight section up one end and then there was the cardio section up the other. And I walked up to do some weights and Lacey was sort of sitting there looking at me going, oh, just the boys down that end, mummy. I mean, this is at a really young age, and this is what we see just in the gyms all the time. Is that sort of diversity happening? Is it just because of where the interests lie, do you find?
Yeah, I think it probably is a little bit of that. And I think even from a practitioner sense, like there's probably many more male allied health practitioners with an interest in strength and conditioning as opposed to females. I don't feel like we're anywhere near 50-50. And I probably feel that's maybe still a bit of education that needs to be happening in the allied health space, because we understand the importance of it. But as soon as you step into working with anyone who's your treatment is really performance based, it's not just about pain anymore, and you're bringing more to the table for this person, then you can't not have that as part of the equation. So I really feel like they need to be, people need to be more open, depending on the clientele you're working with. But the strength component is huge. So I think more and more, I think we'll see that I think we'll see females increase in the strength conditioning space as we go.
Sorry, we lost your sound there for a bit, Tina. That's okay.
Oh, really?
No,
okay.
You're good. No, look, absolutely. And I think that's a good segue, because obviously we've all got opinions based upon these sorts of things. And I think it's really important to have a look at where the statistics lie. So I'm going to share with you now. You can see my screen there?
Yep.
So just in regards to, where we're sitting at the moment, there's an interesting quote from Michelle Redfern that goes on to say that obviously here in Australia, from what we see, we have three of the most successful sporting teams in the world: the Matildas national football team, the Southern Stars national cricket team, and the Australian Diamond national netball team. Now, there's some men that probably would argue that they're not three of the most successful, but, you know, collectively, they've achieved so much in their field. But yet, despite this and the explosive growth of 76% in AFL participation rates by girls and women since the advent of the AFLW, women are horribly represented in sports leadership, media, and funding. So obviously AFL, and, you know, Michelle and Louise, you can probably extend on this here. Women have been interested in this for a really long time, but that having their own league that they can actually embrace and find their own culture to grow there has seen a surge of young girls getting involved in this and getting active on the footy field. I know when I grew up, it was always head down to the footy club. The boys were there. Dad and my brother were all there all the time. We are seeing this, and Louise, you're front of mind, you know, when it comes to making headway in this league. Is it just a matter of time, really, that obviously with the participation rates increasing, that we are going to see more and more women and girls getting involved in sport, and then gradually over time the leadership will just follow suit? Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think the participation's actually always been there. I mean, women have been playing football in Australia for around 100 years. The VFL concept of the Premier League football was quite a well-followed thing around the Melbourne metropolitan region. And it wasn't really until the AFL really started to adapt and adopt the concept that women, you know, could be involved in these spaces. But it took a phenomenal amount of hard work. Like, even if I take a significant, you know, a role model of my own, like Debbie Lee, she's the first AFL you know, general manager of the Western Bulldogs. She's the first woman to be you know, put into the AFL Life Members Hall of Fame, and it took a significant amount of pushing. We talk about Susan Alberti and those sort of stakeholders that really invested their time and energy and a lot of their own personal funding and money into this space. And if it wasn't for those types of really sort of dominating, pioneering women, we wouldn't be in this position. So in going forward, like, I love that the fact that the AFL have adopted women's football, and the money that they can inject into it certainly does help go a long way. The funding for even particularly in our AFL department in the VFL, you know, staff and funding for staff and support is still quite a difficult thing, but I think through the participation is certainly there, and as the AFL continue to adopt it and support it, it will only continue to grow. But it certainly wasn't an easy thing to just get over that first little line when the AFL season started. So yeah.
And an extension of that, once you actually do get involved and you do start participating, then you potentially become a practitioner or step into that leadership role. Tina, over the years, and we could call you, with myself, one of the veterans on this panel, it's all about networking. You know, every single opportunity you have, I'm sure you've said yes to, you've embraced, you've stepped in, and every connection that you make has led to another opportunity. How important has that been for you?
Oh, really important. And it's sort of this, I think it should be reinforced almost at a university level, because I think lots of graduates are coming out doing all these courses. They're like, how many courses can I do in addition to my study that I've already done? But if you've got, you can have all the certificates in the world, but if you've got nowhere to actually make use of those skills and no one who's going, yeah, we need your skill set. So work on building connections all the time. I think that's super important. And that could mean coaches, especially. And if that means volunteering your time to just help out, do some free screenings, do some free assessments, however you need to be able to connect to whatever cohort of people you'd like to be involved with. I think don't always feel like you have to be paid for skill, like, or experience. So sometimes giving a little bit will pay dividends in the end.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting that you say that. I'm going to share my screen again. Part of the suggestion is that you don't always have to have these paid roles. And this new research, Advancing Women in Sport, by Michelle Redfern, actually found some interesting statistics in that women are actually getting involved. In fact, when it comes to the underrepresented volunteer roles, women are actually exceeding men. in these roles. When it comes to leadership roles, we're sitting here at 3.9% on boards, directors, chairs, and CEOs. But clearly, these statistics show that women are getting involved. Maybe we are a little bit more empathetic. Maybe women are nurturing. They're running the oranges. They're looking after their kids' sporting clubs and generally getting in behind the scenes in regards to administrative, secretarial, all that sort of stuff. These are non-paid roles. So women are certainly getting involved, but they're not hitting those leadership roles that are somewhat recognized on the, I guess within those boards of clubs. Michelle, why do you think that is?
Oof. That feels like a loaded question. I mean, some of it I imagine just has to do with our general role historically as being the caregivers for families. So a lot of women at the age in which you're getting involved in elite sport and boards is also the time when a lot of women are currently having their families. And so I don't know, I don't personally have children, but a lot of my friends do, and they don't have time to do more than what they're doing at work and raising their family. And so trying to sit on a board or get involved at higher levels becomes more challenging because they just don't have the resources as much as the men do, which is still an unfortunate reality, I think. And I feel the same way about just even like, it's great to see that women are volunteering a lot more, but I also think that women need to know what they're worth and be able to ask for being paid roles. And you can volunteer all you want, but until you actually step into a paid position, it's hard to actually make those steps forward. So yeah.
And hopefully, as we extend on that, as I share my screen again, a really interesting quote here is that, as we can see, in 2019, only 24% of CEOs across 63 Australian funded national sporting organisations were women. So 1/4. So there really is a gap between going in, volunteering your time, and then stepping up, stepping forward, leaning in, and embracing those roles of additional leadership and responsibility. And I think as the conversation continues, I want to look at some of those barriers. And I guess here's a really good graphic for the knock-on effect. And I'd love to know where you see which one of these four probably being the most instrumental. Is it that we need to increase female participation? Is it the networking and skill building side for girls and inspiring and motivating, and the mentoring side to actually encourage them to step into these leadership roles? Is it that employability aspect and suggesting, as you said, Michelle, that women, creating those higher earnings so that they can focus on these more as a career-driven goal? Where do you sit with that, Louise, in regards to what your opinion would be, where the first place to start in bridging that gap between taking these women from volunteers and being certainly involved in these clubs and sporting organisations, but having them step up and maybe it's a confidence thing. Maybe, there are a certain amount of, what's your take on that?
Well, just in my experiences in what I'm actually trying to do from an Osteo Sports Network level, like I've been integrating with students, and I would say that, in regards to, sports training mentoring and the students that I'm mentoring, it would be 50-50 in relation to both females and males interested in those types of roles. But as I said, I think the biggest thing that is lacking in females is just the confidence. They're lacking some of those people that have gone before them. And as I said, I'm happy to put the big bull bar on and forge away. And if I can open up, I suppose the overall goal with Osteo Sports Network from an allied health point of view is that I think the osteopaths can provide an amazing or a massive amount of value to sports medicine teams in that more traditional environment that they're used to. I think that osteopaths have a huge amount of value, and I think it's just about trying to set some examples of how it can be done and instilling some more confidence. I think the participation is there. I think they just need a little bit more of an example and those little inspirational things, like the same way that the 8 little girls now have AFLW football players to look up to. There's more of them, and the more of them that there are, the more young girls are participating. So the more influential leaders that we have and the more confidence girls have. And if our job is to, in our commitment and in our involvement, if our role is to inspire more to do that, we're certainly doing that. And I'm noticing, I suppose, if we can enhance more from an allied health point of view, a greater representation or enhance that representation, it will hopefully inspire more to follow and do the same.
And I think, Tina, you're probably like me. You've done a lot of mentoring over the years, particularly in these, the stages of internships and trying to get some of these sports trainers out in there and into clubs. I know personally my mentoring, it's very difficult because we mentor all the same. And I'm sure you'll agree, whether it's a male or a female, you offer mentoring and you offer guidance. Is this something that you think about, I guess, when it comes to these roles in leadership, that we need to potentially mentor males and females differently, or we just need to keep doing what we're doing?
I think it really depends on the individual. Like Louise said, I think confidence definitely is a big issue for some people, and feeling like I don't know enough about that. And so when I was talking about the volunteering before, I feel like if you've got an option to spend some time with a coach somewhere, and learning more about the mechanics of the sport, or whether it's with physios that are already involved in that sport, or whoever you're learning from, it doesn't matter what modality they are. But I think if you've got that opportunity, that's like the door's opened, so therefore your people start to know you, start to know what you're about, ask questions, they see that you're keen, your enthusiasm. The volunteering is purely your opportunity to get to know people and make connections. And then basically you need them to understand your worth. And I think that's really important, and the value that you can bring to them. So if you've got, when I work with a coach, for example, and it doesn't matter male or female, but if they've got an athlete that they want to perform at their very best, and I can bring something to the table that can enhance that and offer a different point of view and offer them, something that they may not have seen. And then all of a sudden this person starts performing better, automatically the information I've given them, they see that as valuable. So my value to that group that we're part of all of a sudden is a lot higher. So I could do that without being paid. And I know the next time I'll say, if you have any trouble with any of your other players, feel free to send them down. And I know that then they'll be happy to pay for whatever I can, because they know already I've proven myself purely by having that little bit of an opportunity to show what I can bring. So I think not almost underselling yourself, and definitely knowing your worth, but if you do have to give a little bit of time to just concrete that connection, that's really, really important. And as far as mentoring guys and girls differently, I think it's still very individual, because I've got guys that need more confidence building and girls that are really confident. Like, I feel like it's not always the same.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, because we are quite balanced in allied health and we're not seeing those separations. One of my good friends, Mead Harris, is the founder of the Hawthorn Club, which generates and encourages women in sustainable energy around the world. And some of the percentages they look at, I mean, these women now, when you're looking at Shell, BP, some of these big mining industries, they now have to set aside at least 3 women on a board, or these seats are not going to be filled by women. Now, most of these have to do with engineering. And as I was suggesting to her when I spoke about it, it starts at the university level. When you're talking about engineers, you've got more men seeking these engineering positions at a university level to study. So when you're kind of reducing that sample size and the pool from which you can select from, there are certain industries that certainly have that gender inequality, and it starts from the university, not from the choices that you get when you get to that board level. I'm sure that there's some boards in sustainable energy that would love a woman present, but when you've got 100 male engineers applying for a job and 2, I know that you would still want to get that role and get that job because you're the best person for the job, but you certainly are in a better position when one of those positions has to go to a woman. You've got a 50-50 chance as a woman, or you've got a 1 in 100 as a man to get one of the 2 positions that you've got left. We don't see that much in allied health, but I'd love to step to you now, Michelle. Now, you work in 2 totally different sporting fields, as we know. You work in football, and you also work in the Australian Ballet. Is there a little bit of discrimination, I guess, gender discrimination, when it comes to being in the ballet? Are you more favourable as a female in sport in that particular area? Is it, we're talking about football often, but let's flip it on its head. Are women more dominant in dancing, sporting, gymnastics, all of those sorts of things?
I would generally say yes. I think in performing arts in general, it tends to be more female-driven physios. I think sometimes, unfortunately, because it doesn't get looked at as a sport, and I can say that from experience, even at one point not that long ago, I had a boss who I was asked to do a PD on the foot and ankle. And the comment was, you can do the stuff about gymnastics and dancing, and then I'll cover the sports side. And I thought, wow, you know, ballet dancers are among the most elite sportsmen in the world. The stuff that they can do is unbelievable. So I think a lot of women get involved because they would have danced, they would have done gymnastics. It's a friendly area for them, and it's an easy space to be involved in an elite level as a woman. But I think it still does kind of not get looked at as being elite sport in that sense. At the Aussie Ballet, we have a good blend now. When I first started, we were mostly women with one male Myo. Now we have a male Myo who came from footy. We have a male part-time physio, and we have a male from footy as well who does our athlete management, like health wellness kind of thing. So we're sort of balanced out. Our S&C is also a male. So we've got, you know, we're probably 50-50 now, which is an interesting diversity because I imagine we're one of the only ballet companies in the world that is more like is now 50-50 rather than dominantly female.
Yeah, right. So you definitely you've been, you know, exposed to all of that different type of dynamic. And I think when I was reading and doing some of the research and reading into some of the statistics, there was 5 research papers run by Advancing Women. And as I was reading through the research and the article, there was a huge quote that took up about a quarter of the page in one of the research papers. And that was this here. It didn't actually quote who said this. It said number 30, and you can go to the end of the paper and actually find out, you know, who quoted it. But it was big and it was bold, and I actually took offense to it. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this as well. And the quote was, whether you're a sideline reporter, a commentator, a player, grassroots or professional, or even a leader, if you're a woman in sport, chances are you've been made to feel like a lesser citizen at some point. I can certainly put my hand up and say that I have never been made feel like a lesser citizen, but also maybe that's because I've been blessed with some of the clubs and stuff that I've worked with. But my point aside, before I get to whether you guys resonate with this quote or not, it was big and it was bold, and I saw it to be orange, firstly, on everything else in the paper was white. And then we've got this big quote in orange that I've copied and pasted. I found it to be somewhat aggressive. And in a research paper that was suggesting that it's not bias towards women in sport, I found this to be bias. What do you feel when you look at this, Louise?
Well, I suppose when I look at that quote straight away, I just, because I've got a lot of friends now, obviously the AFLW competition came up against quite a bit of public adversity in the initial stages. I think, you know, the general public's sort of now drawing comparisons to now the modified male game to the female game. You can quite often now see, you know, some of the struggles the women have had. But obviously, you know, with people not sort of understanding women's football, it took a whole lot of, you know, essentially girls who, you know, there were some strong leaders in the AFLW competition, but typically female footballers aren't sort of instilled with all of the tools and the strategies and the skills that they need to represent female well. They're just trying to play sport, but every single one of those females has at some point had to step up to play a leadership role in this space, whether they've liked it or not. And I've, you know, as I said, being across a couple of different clubs and living with some AFLW players as well, you know, I constantly hear of the struggles where they constantly feel like they're in a fight to try to prove themselves in that sport. Even friends who are even across, you know, AFL sort of media, like whether it's radio or Fox Footy and things like that. It's still quite a dominated male industry, and women find it a little bit difficult to sometimes grab that microphone and have their say. So in regards to feeling less of a citizen, you know, I've taken quite a lot of offence over the last 3 years to some of the negative feedback on women's footy, and it's very hard not to take it personally. But I think females are doing a fantastic job at trying to rise about it. You know, if you don't like it, turn it off, and, you know, just keep doing what you're doing. So yeah, I would say that there's a lot of my friends and myself that have been subject to feeling a bit lesser. but there's only one way forward, and that's to keep doing what they're doing. So I'm really proud of a lot of my friends for doing what they do, and they inspire me every day to continue to support them, give them lift and motivate them to continue doing what they're doing, because it's fantastic.
Yeah. And as I said, I mean, look, even though I haven't been exposed to that, it's certainly out there. There are certainly differences in how males and females tackle things and how easily things come to some genders. What about you, Tina? Have you been made to feel like I think it's the term lesser citizen that I'm having issues with. But I mean, look, that's what the quote is. Have you been made to feel like a lesser citizen being a female?
Yeah, I can't say I have, Jade. I don't think, I think that's, I found that a bit offensive as well, actually. But I'd say that basically if you've earned the respect of those around you, then that helps you not feel like there's no reason. If they can respect your value and your skill set, then there's no reason why you should feel like a lesser citizen. So I think if you go in all guns blazing, show them what you got, I think you build a pretty robust almost persona when you're surrounded. Even so, I can be in a locker room with all other male practitioners, no problem, at an event, and we're all very respectful, even though we're all different professions. It doesn't matter, and we're professional. We're working with professionals. These people are worth a lot of money. They play for a lot of money. So there's no reason to be made to feel like a lesser citizen. They're not threatened by me, or there's none of that. So I think it's building respect amongst your peers as well helps that.
Absolutely. That is the beautiful word that describes all of this, and that's respect. As a young 19-year-old student, I was in the locker rooms, and there's certainly guys that would drop a towel in front of you and try and get a rise or make you feel uncomfortable. That's not making me feel like a lesser citizen. That was disrespectful. And I think that's the difference. If you cross-relate lesser citizen and disrespectful, then yes, I've certainly been disrespected in the locker room. How do you find now? How is it with you at the Melbourne Footy Club, Michelle? How do you find the boys? Is there an element of more respect because you're a female, or are you just one of the boys?
So look, I just consult there. So I'm in a very different role, because when I go in and do something very specific that they've hired me to do as an expert. But I do find it funny, because when I assess in the locker room area, like the treatment room, every now and again, one of them will swear and you'll just hear language. And it's specifically because there's a lady in the room. And I'm just like, you definitely don't have to do that for me. So don't worry about it. But they also have a female physio full time. So that might also change their kind of culture towards having women on their site. But I think, like you guys have said, as long as you're doing if you're the best at the job, then the athletes will respect you. I would generally say that my experience of having been disrespected comes more from bosses or colleagues who are maybe a step ahead of me or something along those lines. Because I have definitely, sort of like Lou said, I've had some times in my career where people, I've said something and then my male colleague said the exact same thing, and everyone was like, oh, it was a wonderful thing. And I was just like, I'm sure I just said that, and it's again, I don't necessarily think I felt like a lesser citizen, but it was definitely disrespectful. And I thought, what is happening right now? So, yeah.
And I think I see you nodding your head away, Louise, because I know over the years you've worked, and it's not even a matter of working hard. You are one of the boys. When you get down to that club, they embrace you like one of their own. It doesn't matter what club you go to. And I think, like respect, it is something that is earned, and you don't want to be, I don't think it's about being treated lesser or more or different. It's about being just treated the same, would you say?
Well, as I said, when I put on my football hat, I can certainly feel the backlash when it comes to traditionally what is particularly football, because it's traditionally seen as a male sport. We're invading a territory that potentially people are a little bit uncomfortable with. But when I put on my osteo hat, and I go around a significant number of clubs these days. Part of my role as an osteopath, being an osteopath interested in sport, is to educate clubs. I do injury, lower limb injury, risk assessments and injury prevention programs. I come in and give advice on athlete preparation for sport. And when I walk into a club, and it's largely due to the great female influences I've had in my life, that comment that if I'm a female, and until COVID hit, to walk into a club and to look a male in the eye, shake their hand and deliver some sort of piece of information or knowledge with confidence and conviction. It's all it takes. So when I have my Osteo Sports Network students with me, or my graduates and my mentors, I say, get your notebook out and take note and walk in. And it doesn't matter when you walk into a club, you are the medical officer. They are looking for you to be that trusted resource, to be there when they need you the most. So to be able to walk in and line up any stakeholder in the club and deliver with confidence and conviction when you walk into that arena, that my name's Louise and this is my knowledge and this is my skill. If you present yourself that way, you'll generally find that the respect is great. And I get a lot of feedback on that from local clubs, from local presidents of footy clubs and things like that, you'd make a great coach one day. And the boys really, they had your attention. But at the same time, I find that I assimilate with the sport and I can get on really well with the guys as well. And I just think it's a skill you can certainly learn as a female to back yourself in those situations. And yeah, again, it's very rewarding when you find yourself within that realm. Boys can be a tough wall to break down, but once you show them that you are knowledgeable, and even the concept of faking it till you make it, you don't have to be the best. You just have to, as I say with my graduates, the goal is to not always worry about being the best, but the goal is to become a well-respected and well-recognised professional within your industry. And that's when people will take you seriously.
There it is right there. The reason why she is our GRX rising star. That was pretty amazing from, an emerging leader. And I think it comes from passion, and the confidence that you talk about does come from being familiar, and it does come from being in a comfort zone. And I'm sure that there are a lot of young female sports trainers out there who are just not comfortable in a male locker room. Now, that's got nothing to do with the people that are surrounding you. It could just be your personality. It could be your environment and your background and your social or cultural background, which probably takes me to the next slide I'd love to share with you. And that is from some research that's been done by Christine May by Women in Sport. And this research goes in to suggest that there are 4 reasons basically that we need to look at as emerging leaders, women already in leadership positions, and just people in sport in general, to determine why these barriers, or why the equality is so different from what we're actually seeing in these organizations and what's actually happening. So one of them is participation, and that's in general, women are more likely than men to be insufficiently active. Young boys in sporting clubs are more involved, they're more vested, and that's just what the stats are showing us. Young girls participate less actively in sport, and that's just what the stats are showing us. So it's starting from a grassroots level. The next one is in leadership, which we talked about before, comprises 24% of CEOs across 63 national. The women just aren't present on those boards and in those leadership roles to be able to lead by example. Then there's the other barriers like access, time, facilities, transport, costs, the cultural, gender roles, expectations, all of those sorts of things, the family responsibilities that you were talking about before, Michelle, when you've got these women who do have children or maybe have those more nurturing roles at home. So they've got the responsibilities of being the caregivers. And then facilitators. So health, fun, socializing, key motivators for girls and women, inclusive, less competitive environments. Now we see this even in allied health. Let's just take social media, for example. There are a lot of male allied health voices that we hear on social media, and there are far less women. I know that every time I try and step forward and have a voice, whilst I'm certainly respected and I'm very humbled for that, I feel like I would love more women standing beside me having a voice. Social media, just like sport, is not in some people's comfort zone. Some people don't like stepping forward. And it's not necessarily stepping forward to lead. And what I say to most people is, and particularly women, don't step forward to lead. Step forward because I need you beside me. So, I think it was some of the messages that we need to get across. Which one of these 4, I'm really interested, maybe from you, Tina, which one, if you're looking at particularly women in sport and women in leadership, which of these ones do you think it resonates with you as to why the reason is that there aren't more women in sport? in leadership roles? Oh, do you need me to go back to that slide?
Sorry, can you hear me properly?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I think participation is an issue. I know with golf, even if I look at the institute program, like there's not a lot of young junior female golfers. So when I see that already at a very junior level, they're just either not really interested or there's just not the same. So by the time we get to 15, 16 years old, where basically that's when, you know, if they're going to turn professional or if they're taking it very seriously, that's when it's going to happen. I think if we haven't got the juniors there and the junior development programs aren't encouraging and pushing girls into sport, then that's why participation is a problem. So I think that, and I think that's really sad, because I feel like as even our government should be investing more money into junior development and athlete development at a junior level, and particularly encouraging girls to join different sports and try different things and offer them, you know, different rewards for participating or trying. And some of the girls are amazing, like, you know, that are out there playing, but we don't have a lot of Australian girls at a junior level, which is unfortunate. And from a leadership perspective, I think same sort of thing as before. I think confidence is a big factor. So they feel like, you know, they might be intimidated by men, and they just feel like no one's ever sort of given them that encouragement, maybe to just say, you can do it, you can stand up there, you can, you know, speak about this, or if you're passionate about something, I'm constantly saying to people, if you really feel strongly about an area or something, then use that, and, you know, use that to drive yourself and learn more and, you know, build yourself up and become a leader for that particular area. So I think sometimes people just need a bit of encouragement to do that. So yeah, participation definitely a problem, but leadership, again, I think it's a confidence issue.
Yeah, and knowing these statistics that we've kind of presented now, because I think often, unless they're in your face, they're not front of mind, and you don't see just potentially how big a gap there are in these statistics. Knowing these statistics, should we be encouraging more females, or should we just keep doing what we're doing, Michelle?
I think we should be encouraging more. I'm always a fan of encouraging more women to do more things, better things, new things. The statistic that always sticks with me when I'm doing any kind of application for work or anything like that is that I think it came from a Harvard review a few years back, which is men will apply for a job if they only have 3 out of the 10 requirements, but women will only apply when they have 7. And you know, I after reading that was sort of like horrified. And then I've thought back to positions that I didn't apply for, and I thought, oh yeah, no, okay, that's true. And so I think for me, like what I want to tell women is, and you know, I think having pathways for them to learn these things is to put yourself out there and apply for the job when you've only got the 3 out of the 10, like the boys would, because they don't seem to care. So why should we? And it's that confidence side of it, and the, you know, you don't have to know it all to be able to learn more and be good in that role. Like I've never played footy in my life, and I am telling professional football players what they need to do. I've never danced in my life, and I tell professional ballet dancers what to do. So, you know, definitely had some imposter syndrome going on, but I also was able to be mentored and taught and spend the time with coaches and other people and learn from them to do that. So for me, like I really think pathways and creating networks for women to develop those skills and hone that kind of stuff with other people teaching them. I think we need to keep doing that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Louise? Oh, we've lost you.
Me?
What are your thoughts, Louise?
Yeah. So I've just noticed, obviously now in the last few years, since I've had a little bit more of an affinity and a little bit more of attention driven towards leadership, you know, I've noticed even little things like, you know, the AIS and things coming up with more pathways for women to develop their leadership skills. So whether or not that in high performance leadership as a coach of a team, or whether it's that executive leadership style. So, you know, I know I've got a few friends and colleagues that have been investing a little bit more in, you know, those leadership type academies and programs, which I think will only the more female leaders that we have, particularly if you have a little look at the AFLW. I use that as an example, because we find that more AFLW head coaches, some of the most amazing coaches, are now starting to, you know, have pathways through VFL and coaching academies to become amazing high performance coaches. But then on the side of that, there's also that executive skill. I had a chance to meet an amazing woman recently that, you know, sort of blew my socks off, and she was the CEO of Vic Health, Gerald Rector. Had a conversation with her at the Charles Sutton Medal, and I was blown away by the concept that this woman, who particularly doesn't know anything about, you know, basketball, has gone from Vic Health. She's on the board of directors at Western Bulldogs, and also, you know, now the CEO of Basketball Australia. And I look at that woman and I go, you know, at the end of the day, you don't need to play basketball or know anything about basketball to be a good leader. And I think, you know, I'm really inspired by women like that, you know, the Debbie Lees and those that have just got great leadership skills. And I think that's certainly something that can be taught. And I think that once more women have that knowledge that they can follow those pathways, that we're going to see more women step up in these roles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a great segue to my next slide, which is role models. And it's a great way to kind of finish up. You know, there are women doing some, and men obviously, but this is a women-driven panel, and we have women inspiring us in our lives every day, whether it be at our homes, our mothers, women in positions of responsibility, or whether it just be colleagues, those that are in our teams who are standing beside us, just giving their little subtle encouragement, those walking along next to us. I'd love to know from you, Tina, who's been your role model, not necessarily just in life, but when it comes to being a leader in sport. Has somebody encouraged you to step up, or have you taken a little part of somebody that you've wanted to take on into your leadership journey?
I think, yeah, probably. I think you maybe just even growing up, like your home environment sort of sets you up to understand. And probably, you know, growing up, I had sort of, you know, my dad passed away when I was really young. So my mum became sort of, you know, mum and dad, and she could do anything. She could do men's roles, women's roles. She could do everything from mowing the lawn to, it didn't matter what the jobs were. So for me growing up, it was like, I never really had gender roles as a role model. And I felt like there's nothing to stop you doing whatever you want. So you could do carpentry, you could do plumbing if you were a female, you could do any of those roles. And I think that's really, I think that really set a pathway for me to feel like there's no end point. And I'd probably say she's been my biggest role model, because she never said, there's always like, anytime I'd say, I'm going to do this or do that, she's like, yep, that's fine. As long as you're learning, that's what she'd say. As long as you're learning, it's good. You know, and I think that's really important. And then when I've met other women, like even attending the Women in Sport Awards last year that I was invited to, I was really blown away by the amount of women and just talking to people, there was so many women there, like to name, but just really making headway in all sport, whether it was cricket or footy, and just hearing what they'd achieved, it just blew my mind. So I felt like we're surrounded by a huge amount of powerful women. So we just need to be really open and supportive, and just, you know, keep backing them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What about Michelle? Who's been your role models over the years?
Yeah, look, I've had a few. I would probably start with both my parents, actually. My mom was on all sorts of different boards. She was an international public speaker. She was always very confident and strong about being that kind of thing. But also my dad started the women's soccer league in my hometown because he had 4 girls and there was no sports for us when we were growing up. So, you know, having both parents be really encouraging of being a strong, confident woman is really great. And then when I did my undergraduate degree, the head therapist for the university, it was an athletic therapist, was a female, and she was the coolest. She taught me so much. She taught me that, you know, women didn't have to take any shit from football coaches, from athletes, from anyone. She just kind of put her foot down. Her word was the law. She was in charge of all the athletes. And she's definitely what inspired me to go into physio, because I was just so amazed by what she could do, and that she was running this athletics department as a female. And then more recently, I would say my boss at the ballet, Sue Mays, who's just, you know, over 25 years has built an unbelievable medical department at the Aussie Ballet, and puts out groundbreaking research, and is the leader in her field. And she is so welcoming. As a female, it is so nice to have another female just totally take you under their wing and never feel intimidated. You know, it's just so open and great. And I learn all the time. She actually hates when I call her my boss. she's just like, no, we're colleagues. And I'm like, but you've been, so yeah, so I would say those four have really kind of pushed my career and pushed me to be kind of the person that I am.
And what about you, Louise?
Yeah, I've got the different tiers, I suppose, to my role models. Obviously, I come with a bit of an influence of family history of a family who was successful in a different sort of an agricultural industry. I've had some values instilled in me by some, the pioneering efforts of my grandparents with tractor dealerships and things like that. So I take a lot of my values from them. I suppose I get my compassion and my empathy from my mother. She's always been a very giving person, and I suppose it just, you're built in your mother's shadow a lot of the time, and you relate to them obviously the most. They're your number one fan, and you're theirs. So I suppose when I look at my osteopathic career, there's, a great significant number of people, some of them in this Zoom chat today, that have influenced. I drive off the energy of my osteopathic colleagues, and I really appreciate their contribution, and anything that I can do to give my colleagues lift and then get lift in return is something I value. And then when we come to, I suppose, so the people, my role models at the moment, my junior athletes. Every time I teach a child, kids are neuroplastic, and they learn skills at a phenomenal rate. And when I can give them some advice and coach them, and when they achieve a success, I share that success with them. And then on top of that, going through my own sporting world, we've got some phenomenal coaches in the AFL industry. I'm going through, as I said, I've mentioned Debbie Lee. I've spoken about, even people like Penny Cooler-Reid, who I went to school with. I've got Rowena Young, who's been, involved with women's footy for the last 30 or 40 years. They're just such inspiring women, so dedicated to a cause. And, I take a little bit of their energy, and hopefully I can continue to develop what they've already started. And then every single day, the girls that I play footy with, these girls that run around with superhero capes on, they inspire me every day to continue to want to help improve their message. And again, sport is a team environment, and the longer and the stronger that team message is, the louder the noise we make. So my teammates inspire me every day, and so lots of different layers.
And it is nice to hear that we are a reflection of the people around us, and we take so much from our experiences, and we just kind of chip away and build on that. And self-reflection in the eyes of somebody else is probably one of the most important ways that we can find our blind spots. But more than anything, on top of these amazing women in my life and you ladies on the panel and those that are stepping up and stepping forward, there is an amazing quote, and it's called "The Man in the Arena" by Theodore Roosevelt. But I wanted to read it today and to replace the word man with woman, because I think it's pretty powerful. So it's not the critic who counts, not the woman who points out how strong a woman stumbles or where the doer of deeds could be done better. The credit belongs to the woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends herself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievements, and who at the worst, if she fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that her place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory or defeat. So that's really powerful for
I like
me.
that.
I love it. It's great.
We women are the ones that step up. We're the ones that step forward, who have a voice, because when you show up, other people do too. And that's what you're doing today in talking to us. That's what you do in your sporting fields, in your organizations, in your careers, and as mentors. I am proud and I'm privileged to walk alongside you and next to you as women in leaders and in sport. And I love what you're doing. And I can't wait to watch this next generation of women, female leaders come through, knowing that they've got women like yourselves to look up to. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jade.
Thank you, Jade.
Thank you
Pleasure.
for your time today. I'll no doubt rub shoulders again with you in the near future. There are certainly some channels, and I'll put some tags and all that sort of stuff in the comments so that people can connect with you and read more about you and learn more about you and your amazing journeys, because you've got so many more stories to tell that we didn't even have time to cover today. And in most women female fashion, if we had a wine, we could probably sit here all day and just continue on. But unfortunately, the GRX Live is going to cut us off. So I just wanted to say thank you again very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your efforts, and thanks for the energy and your constant contributions to allied health. We're better for having you in it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having us, Jade. It's fantastic.